Now, I will admit, when the New York Jets hired Todd Bowles to be their next head football coach after the 2014 season, I was on board with it. While you were replacing a defensive minded bum in Rex Ryan with a defensive minded guy in Todd Bowles, I thought the way he conducted himself, the way he carried himself, the way he approached things, his personality were very well suited to provide a counterculture to what Rex Ryan was about, and it would be a very positive change for the New York Jets locker room and organization. And that's what I felt at the time. I was more concerned about the hiring of Mike Maccagnan from the Houston Texans to be their next general manager, because to me, at the end of the day, you're bringing in a guy to run your entire football front office basically that comes from a mediocre situation in Houston. And if you're the Jets, are you trying to build yourself into a 9 or 10 win football team at the end of the day, which is usually all the Houston Texans can muster? Or are you trying to win playoff games and contend for a championship? So that was my concern. But it was a good hire, I thought, when it was made. I wasn't that surprised when they had a productive 2015, even though I didn't think they were going to be that good in 2015. They went out and they got Brandon Marshall. They signed Ryan Fitzpatrick. They made some moves, brought in some veteran names, did these things to compete, signed Darrelle Revis to a big contract. And lo and behold, the Jets were competitive in 2015. They weren't an embarrassment to that Jets fan base. They were 10-6. Of course, leave it to the Jets to win 10 football games and not make the playoffs, but that's what they ultimately did. So it leaves you a little hopeful going into 2016 that things were going to potentially get even better, even though you have to sit there and you look at it and you say this is a team that's starting to get old and some of the moves they're making are only getting them older. And typically when teams do that and they get very heavy into the free agency and trade approach to build a roster, not complement a roster, but actually build one, not just fill it out, that's when you run into the eventuality that those things will start to crumble. Because players will underperform, players will get hurt, you will lack depth, and a lot of problems that arise out of it. And typically, I'm not a fan of firing a head coach after 2 seasons. Sometimes it's called for, sometimes it's appropriate. A lot of times, my thing is that you really should be giving a guy at least 3 years, if not 4, to be able to see how things go out. And that's usually the way it is. But in this particular case, I think it's time for Todd Bowles to go. I think Todd Bowles needs to be fired by the New York Jets. Because in my opinion, Todd Bowles has lost this team. Now, this is not just some overreaction to the fact that the Jets are 4-11. Because I didn't have big expectations for them this year. Their schedule was going to get tougher. They were counting on Ryan Fitzpatrick to have another solid season. You're really hoping and wishing at that point, if that's what you're banking on. But you bring in a Matt Forte, so you get even older. And there's just a lot of concerns I had all the years of addressing defense in the draft, especially early, ignoring the offensive side of the ball. I thought all of that was going to catch up with them. And in some ways, I think it has. But the biggest concern of all to me is it's one thing if you go like 4-11 and your teams are fighting and they're playing hard, they're competing, and they're in the games at the end and maybe they're just not good enough or maybe you just make 1 or 2 mistakes. You can live with that sometimes. You learn and you grow from it and you try to get better. Well, we're talking about a Jets team that's been boat raced in 3 of their last 4 games. Absolutely boat raced. And 2 of those boat races were in really prime time situations. The Monday night game against Indianapolis, for Christ's sakes, they lost 41-10. They gave up over 40 points. They scored 10. Miami, that was another featured Saturday night game. All eyes of the NFL on the Jets and the Dolphins. And the Dolphins beat them 34-13. And then just this past Saturday, the Patriots absolutely cleaned their clocks 41-3. That's not something that good teams do. They don't get boat raced like that consistently. They don't give up like that. And you can sit there and say, sometimes you have a bad game and you're going to get steamrolled. You're going to get blown out. And sometimes even good teams get steamrolled and blown out. You'll have a bad week here and there. But you're talking about 3 of the last 4 games you've been absolutely blown out. And in between, you had to battle it out and beat the 49ers of all damn teams in overtime, it's clearly evident that this team has quit on Todd Bowles. And when you watch them the past few weeks, you can see a lack of effort, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And that's really troubling and really concerning. You're supposed to have some big name guys over there like Darrelle Revis and Sheldon Richardson and Muhammad Wilkerson. And these guys look like they don't care, especially Darrelle Revis. Just going through the motions, collecting their paycheck. Every time a defensive play can be made, they're making business decisions about whether or not they really want to try hard. You're talking about a team this year that's 1-6 at home, 1-4 in the AFC East, 6 losses by 14 plus points. So you get to point to Fitzpatrick, and in general, I think the mishandling of the quarterback situation by the Jets organization and later on by Todd Bowles is a big problem. But that's not the only part. Because maybe your offense struggles or scuffles along, but your defense is getting blown away at times too. Because in 3 of the last 4 weeks, 41-10. 34-13, 41-3. Then you get the crap with Sheldon Richardson going on whatever, somebody's Instagram or Snapchat or whatever the hell it was, and he wasn't immediately suspended. He wasn't immediately benched. Sitting there talking about who get fucked the game or this or that. Where the hoes at? Well, where the hoes are at, they're on the bench, or you could stay your ass at home. To me, that's when Todd Bowles, in a lot of ways, lost this team. When you're going to allow somebody to do that in the locker room before the game, and once you find out, you don't come down swiftly and you don't come down hard and with a vengeance to send a message that that's not how we conduct ourselves as professionals, especially when we're losing professionals. It's one thing if you say that in your winning football games. Where are the hoes at? Well, you know what, your winning games, where are the hoes at? Where are the locker room rats at? It's a fair question to ask. But when you got players doing that, and you can sit there and say it's just one player, but it's kind of emblematic of what I feel has been a very poisoned and diseased locker room in that Jets organization for the better part of a decade now. I don't know if it's ever been very good. It most certainly wasn't under Rex Ryan, and I don't think it's gotten much better under Todd Bowles. I thought at first that his type of style of leadership was going to be effective and was going to be good and a refreshing change for the Jets organization. And frankly, it hasn't been. It's just been a departure from Rex Ryan, but ultimately more of the same type of results. I mean, you can't sit there right now and look at it and say that you feel like Todd Bowles is going to lead them to a much better season in 2017. And if that's the case, then why would you keep him past 2016? These players, we talk about, you look at Cleveland, and a lot of people will sit there and defend Hugh Jackson and talk about how the players are still playing hard. They obviously care. And as a result, they want to sit there and continue to play hard for this guy. And they want to go ahead and try to win for him. And they're going to keep up their efforts and everything else. I see none of that effort coming whatsoever from the New York Jets. If you can't get guys to compete for you, that's when you know it's time to go. The number one thing players can do is play hard. They might not play well, but they can at least play hard and put forth effort. If you can't motivate them enough to play hard, let alone prepare them enough to play well, then you have outserved your usefulness and you no longer have a place as your team's head football coach. And you and your coaching staff needs to go with you. So while I like Todd Bowles, and I hate to sit there and see him get the shaft after 2 years, when you look at the way things have played out in 2016, some of the decisions he's made, some of the questionable moves he's made, and you look at how this team has played lately and that they've just basically mailed it in and they're ready to call it a season, it's time to call an end to Todd Bowles' run as a New York Jets football coach.